Hi students, we are up to chapter 13 and we're going to do a deep dive into paid media. In chapter 13, we learned a little bit about it in chapter 12, so let's get started. So traditional paid media includes things like print, TV, radio, out of home, online media, other traditional or alternative forms that we talk about, like guerrilla marketing. And in paid media, the advertiser controls the size, the timing of the message, but cannot control whether the reader or viewer notices the ad, of course. But this is paid traditional media that we all see. Published print media vehicles include things like newspapers, magazines, brochures, posters, outdoor billboards. So print provides clearly more information, rich imagery, and a longer message than other media forms. So you might say, why a longer message? Well, if something's in a magazine or brochure, they tend to hang around longer. And certainly posters and outdoor formats like a billboard are up longer than you'd see a 30-second ad, say, on television. So if any of you are choosing print media as a vehicle, as a media source, you probably have baby boomers as your target audience. And if so, then this is one of the qualities that they look for. They like something with more information that hangs around the house a little bit longer, may be read and reread again. Companies that have something like cars or something colorful with information, like a drug company, they usually tend to do more print ads for that reason, because you can add more information than a 30 or 60-second ad that you may see on television. So the pros and cons of each type of media, you can clearly read here, but I'll just go over briefly. If you're going to go with magazine, like I said, it has a long lifespan. You can be more creative and targeted, because remember what we said about magazines, which actually we'll say a little more in this chapter, is they're laser focused. Things like Field and Stream go after the outdoorsman. Something like Bon Appetit or Food and Wine go after the foodie. So they're definitely more targeted. You typically pick up a magazine because you have an interest or a hobby. Okay, our radio is inexpensive, and it can be targeted again, maybe for like a country station or rock station or even a talk station. But again, the con to that is that it's short life. You don't get feedback. And messages can often be skipped because we're, jumping around and looking for different stations along the way on our drive. Let's skip down to out of home. It can be targeted and highly visible. We know that from some of the great billboards that my online class showed, especially the one that for the air conditioning company, Your Wife is Hot. But on the con side of it, we know that that can wear out over time, and there's also only so much you can put up on the billboard. And not only that, we're quickly passing by the billboard too. Let's talk about television. Television's great if you're demonstrating something and there's a wide reach, but we know it's very expensive. And again, a lot of hopping around, getting up when a commercial's on. And so we'll move on from there, but I think this is a great way to use this information when you're deciding on what media to use due to your surveys. So published print media. Some messages delivery has shifted onto online, as we talked about in the last chapter. Newspapers and magazines have definitely gone online. But billions of dollars are still spent on print media, so that's not going away. Print media generally provides more information, as I mentioned, has a lot of rich imagery, meaning it's very colorful, and it has a longer shelf life than, say, a broadcast. It's information-rich environment, so print ads are often used to generate cognitive responses. Published media, newspapers. We know this isn't a huge area, but we still have to talk about it because it is still a media vehicle for an older generation. I'd say the older baby boomers and really those in their 80s and early 90s probably. That's the silent generation they're called. So newspapers' primary function is news. Um, Making it useful for ads announcing sales and events. And people read newspapers as much for the ads as they do for the news stories. Newspaper advertising plays a strategic role in the marketing mix still. So with more than 6,400 national and local papers in the US still, they remain an important part of the local scene. So if you're in Boca, they have their own newspaper as well as Wellington and Del Rey. Readers have been gradually moving online, and consumers still consider newspapers as a trusted and reliable source of information. Newspapers have what we call a circulation, and it's the primary way that newspapers reach is measured. Remember, we talked about reach before, and compared to the reach of other media. As news audience has moved online, newspapers have responded with well-designed websites, as we mentioned, and I have a few listed here for the New York Times. However, gains in digital ad revenue have not made up for the continued decline in this print revenue. Newspapers can be categorized according to their publication frequency, such as a daily newspaper, a weekly newspaper, and then there's like the Sunday edition. That's the one that's packed with all the ads and the coupons, or at least it used to be years ago. Retailers like to place ads and press releases in daily newspapers because they have a short lead time. And then you can get very selective to your market and your target audience. So that's another pro for newspapers. Local advertisers and volume buyers get discounts for national advertisers. They pay higher rates. So if you're a local company like a car dealership or a furniture company, you can get definitely some cheaper discounts for volume. Ads are sold based on size and also the space where you would like to put the ad within the paper. Obviously, the front and back page are always a good place to be. Same with magazines. And the charges are published on what is called a rate card. Newspapers also do co-op advertising. So that means that two companies get together to place an ad and share the cost. So local retailer might place an ad, like over here on the left, there might be for ABC Tires, but they've co-opted it with Michelin Tires, which is the national advertiser. Same over here where Coke and McDonald's, two national companies, come together to share an ad. Types of newspaper advertising, again, you're not going to run into this a lot, but for the purposes of knowing information in an advertising class, it's important to understand the terms when we're talking about newspaper advertising. So display advertising is the dominant form, and it can be any size and placed anywhere in the paper. It could be a local retail or a national brand. Run of paper rate means it can run anywhere, and preferred position rate means the advertiser selects sections where the ads run. So obviously a preferred position is on the back or front page or inside page. There's also a classified section, which basically, I don't really know who's looking in there anymore, but it's individuals selling personal goods. There's also supplements that are included, like I said, in the Sunday paper. They look like magazines, but they still have coupons in them or promotional pieces. These are called freestanding inserts, or an FSI, and they're also, another name is called a circular. So let's move on to the magazine industry, which I find much more interesting. So most American adults, believe it or not, still read at least one magazine a month. and they spend more time with them than other print media. So similar to other mass media, magazines were hurt by the recession, and they are slowly bouncing back. But as I've said earlier in this session, color and quality of reproduction is the biggest strength of a magazine. Think about the magazine ads we talked a little bit about in class this semester. It's always the bright colors, the education, the information that you're going to get from a print advertisement. The magazine industry hasn't suffered as much from the recession and changing media environment as newspapers, because I think they've really focused on different areas. As you can see here, I show a few pictures of this growing niche market, such as quilt making and crochet world and trains. So if you're interested in something specific, a hobby, this is good for you. People spend more time with magazines because the ads and articles are usually more relevant to their interests. So, if this is possible media vehicle for your target audience for FitCrunch, what makes sense? Think about this in terms of what types of magazines that your audiences are interested in. For example, if you decide to go the print direction, you'd probably find yourself in some healthy eating type magazines or exercise magazines. So you want these titles and of magazines to match up with your audience. So think about that. Okay, traditional delivery is called controlled circulation, and it is through newsstand purchases or home delivery. They call it controlled circulation because they have a sense of, they have a mailing list for home delivery, so they know that's controlled, and newsstand purchases are also a controlled environment. A non-traditional delivery might mean that they are in maybe newspapers or delivered through professional offices or an electronic delivery. So they don't have as much control over that type of circulation. There's also a really interesting thing that they do. It's called selective binding, and it uses subscriber data to produce magazines with special sections based on demographics. So you might pick up a travel and leisure magazine here in Florida, and there will be a specific section on maybe South Florida or resorts in Florida or beaches to go to in Florida. That's selective binding. So Bon Appetit magazine, for example, they also personalize their magazines to their subscribers. And then there's also satellite transmission. It allows magazines to print regional editions with regional advertising. Okay, so over here on the left, when there was a big the Big Five or March Madness one year, they're using Sports Illustrated as an example of the different teams they have up front. They talk about the Wildcats in one marketplace and the Panthers in another. So that's called satellite transmission. So there's a lot of really adapting and tailoring that goes on with magazines, maybe more than you thought of. Types of magazines, two different types. Consumer magazines, this is what we find at the grocery store, versus business, targeting businesses. For example, for this class, if you were to work for an ad agency, they probably have a subscription to Advertising Age. These are industrial magazines, professional magazines, corporate publications. Magazines are still popular, as I mentioned, because they really focus on a specific audience, geographic coverage, demographic coverage, and diversity. So if you're thinking about advertising for in a magazine because of your demographic, it might not be a bad idea. It might be a very lucrative idea depending. So think about magazines. When they assemble their media mix, planners need to think about geography. That's local, regional, or national editions when they're thinking about what magazines they want to be put in. Demographics, including age, income, occupation, editorial content, like is it for a specific interest group, like is it general, like a Time magazine, or is it more women's or related to business or health or beauty, for instance? Also, physical characteristics. Sometimes we like a larger magazine, like I think ESPN now is a big magazine versus a smaller Reader's Digest. Most of them, though, are still that 8.5 by 11. So now let's talk about advertising costs. They're based on the size and the magazine circulation. So if you have a circulation like Time magazine that hits a huge audience, then it's going to cost a whole lot more than like a Florida regional magazine, for instance. And of course, the size of the ad makes sense that it would cost more than, say, a half-page ad versus a full-page ad versus an ad on the back cover. So double-page spread is 2 ads. They're face-to-face, so that you get a full spread on both pages. A double-page ad must jump the gutter, they call it. That's the white space between the inside pages. And this is the example here on the bottom of the slide. A page without an outside margin is called a bleed, and you can see here on both of these examples, they don't have a margin. A gatefold is more than 2 connected pages that fold into themselves. I do have examples, live examples that I bring to class, but I want you to imagine you open up a magazine and the page kind of folds out. That's called a gatefold. Advertorials are articles about a company or a product or brand written by the corporation's publicity department. And sometimes you're reading those advertorials and it says very small on the top of the page, and you realize you're reading something about a brand and you're like, oh no, I got to move on. But usually information, when you're looking for more information about maybe a product or brand. There's directories such as the yellow pages. We're going to move on. I don't even think many places have them anymore. Now we're moving on to radio. This also might be an area you decide on. Believe it or not, we still listen to the radio. Either we stream it or we have internet services such as Pandora or Spotify. I listen to a lot of radio, satellite radio. Virtually every household in the U.S. has at least one radio or more. And radio is talk or news or music driven, where ads can engage the imagination and create stories in the mind. That is what you will have to do if you create a radio ad. If that came up as a form of media that your target audience uses, you can create a radio ad for your project. The U.S. has more than 10,000 commercial radio stations, believe it or not, serving a lot of local markets. I have 104.3, The Shark, South Florida's Alternative, for instance. The radio industry growth has been slow, though, and there's different forms as I have listed here. Here's a great ad for radio. I believe it was in Advertising Age magazine, but Nielsen Audio is one of several major audience rating services in the advertising industry, and it estimates that the size of the radio audience for the U.S. Is more than 300 U.S. markets. So what they're trying to tell you is that on average, radio holds onto more than 92% of its lead-in audience during commercial breaks. So in other words, people aren't necessarily always changing the channels on radio as compared to, say, TV. Radio ads use jingles to make us connect with the company, and these are usually set to music. We all know what that jingle is. Most of you chose as your jingle the State Farm jingle. Radio networks are groups of affiliated stations, and the affiliates are a network system that produce programs and distribute them, such as iHeartRadio is an example of an affiliate. There's network radio advertising. And that's when groups of local affiliates are connected to one or more national networks. So, for example, you have ABC Radio, CNN Radio, Fox Sports, Fox News networks. They're examples of local affiliate that connect with national networks. There's also spot radio advertising, usually local, but some national. Advertisers place ads with individual stations that make sense for their audience, and they can tailor those ads. They're flexible in content, timing, and rates. Then there's syndicated radio. Okay, this is where the Sirius XM comes in. Say that Howard Stern show, a favorite of my husband's. The original type of radio programming that plays on a large number of affiliated stations is called syndicated radio advertising, and program syndicated offers advertisers high quality, specialized, and original programming. So if you listen to Sirius XM radio, for instance, you're going to find very specialized ads for that group of people listening to that channel. So for instance, Howard Stern has a huge following, okay? Probably more Gen Xers, and baby boomers, males, okay? So if you have a product that you want to promote to that specific area and that audience, that's a great place to place ads for razors and other things that men use, such as, grooming products. I've definitely seen a lot of gift items around certain holidays like Valentine's. So know your audience, and this is a loyal audience, and so are other Sirius XM stations besides Howard Stern. Okay, broadcast media, more about the radio audience. They're usually grouped by time of day when they're most likely to be listening. So in my online advertising class, we talked about who are the kinds of companies that use day parts to advertise their products. So when we talk about FitCrunch, if we decide to use a radio ad, we might want to think about a meal replacement item. So it might be a good idea to promote it for breakfast or a lunch, like a meal replacement. So there's different drive times that they use. So there's a morning drive time, midday, evening, and then late evening here. So think of some examples of companies that advertise during certain day parts. And does it matter for FitCrunch? I think it does when we talk about a meal replacement. I'm not thinking we're talking about a dinner per se, but certainly a morning drive or midday lunch. So you think of companies like McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts. I literally just heard another ad for Domino Pizza. So obviously they're promoting right that mid-afternoon to get everyone kind of thinking about dinner. What should we do? Order Domino's. So it makes sense to consider what time of day you're going to use. Hi students, we are finishing up chapter 13 that we didn't get completed in class last night. So I wanted to go through these slides so you have a reference point and some information about examples. So here we go. Last night we were talking about television, and it is still very popular in our society. It comes in different ways. It's not your 3 channels anymore. Now there's so much more with Netflix and Hulu and Sling and video streaming. And especially during COVID, we were definitely glued to a lot of programs that were available to us and binge watched to keep our mind off things. As far as the structure of the industry goes, a broadcast network is a distribution system that provides television content to its affiliated stations. So we have our ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. We know these are our major networks, and they capture less than half of the audience because of the rise of all these other cable stations I have underneath, whether it's HGTV or the Food Network or CNN and a variety of other opportunities that have really sprung up in the last 10 to 15 years. Network television sells to national advertisers, and then you have independent stations that are local stations, like here in South Florida, and they're not affiliated, but they're considered independent stations. So they do a lot of smaller ads for, say, furniture companies like City Furniture, and use local celebrities like Jesse Palmer. You can take a look at this video here for a local station. National advertisers sometimes buy local advertising on a city-by-city basis using spot advertising. There's also subscription television, cable, and public television. You guys are all aware of this. We subscribe to Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu. At our house, certainly there's a lot more you can add on: HBO, Stars, etc. There's satellite TV, syndication, and on-demand programming, as you know, and this is where the binge watching comes in. To sum it up, TV advertising is a great way to tell a story, and we know storytelling is very important. It's good at demonstrating how things work. So if you're using a video, this is where for your advertising opportunity, and if your demographic fits into television or cable or satellite, then this might be the route to go for you. Long form ads run on late night TV, and they don't cost as much as daytime ads. There's roadblocks as well, where an ad runs on all the stations. And then, of course, we know about our late night infomercials with the Foreman Grill and other products that are out there. But they're really that direct response that we talk about a lot, where we want someone to act at the time. Participations, advertisers can buy any time that's available. The most common approach is that's used today. Then there's these spot announcements that appear between breaks on local programs. These are sold by local affiliates. There's also sponsorships. As we know, everything is sponsored these days, especially in sports, whether it be the halftime show or halfway through a quarter of the way through the game, or every event seems to be sponsored. And that kind of came to a halt with COVID, because we weren't having a lot of sporting events going on, but people kind of pivoted and shifted, and it's a really big way to make money. Then you have public service announcements. These are created by agencies donating their time, and a lot of them are for things like not smoking and texting and driving and things like that. We know about our target audience, but we might not know that a certain target audience might be matched to a certain program. So television advertising is tied to television programming, and the ad's effectiveness is determined by the popularity of the television show. So, for instance, This Is Us was very popular. A Million Little Things is coming back. So when you have a really popular show that Seinfeld, for instance, is very popular, Friends, those kinds of shows, the advertising during the commercial breaks are more expensive, because it has a higher viewership, and it might be a certain target audience that you are looking for your client. So out-of-home advertising, again, that kind of came to a halt, but again, picking back up again. Places like movie theaters, airports, highways, buses, and this is a great way to promote just giving yourself that guerrilla marketing, where we're not typically seeing something outdoors. Sure, we know that we're going to see, billboards as we're going down the Florida Turnpike or 95, but if you get creative with them, or you do something a little bit different. Certainly stadiums have a lot of advertising, and just kind of be on the lookout for different kinds of outdoor advertising. Video game advertising, very popular again. And this kind of is a combination of outdoor and non-traditional. So if you're trying to make suggestions to your client, you might want to take a look at some of these interesting places that are non-traditional, which means it cuts through the clutter. So it could be everything from an airport media to buses, to places out on a golf course, event sponsorship, malls, um, sporting events, uh, doctor's offices. So there's so many different places that we have outdoor advertising. So once you know about it, all of a sudden you can't believe how much advertising there actually is out there. Place-based media, that's out-of-home media, or place-based media includes everything from billboards to hot air balloons. Um, it could be buses, posters, kiosks, blimps, lots of things. Out-of-home media ranks second to the internet in terms of growth. So I think, once COVID's over, we're going to have a lot going on where we are out and about, and it's going to be even a bigger opportunity for companies. It is situational and it can target specific people at specific times. So if you're at a stadium, at a concert, or at a sporting event, we know the kinds of people that go to things like that. So this is where, when you're on the other side of it, where you're trying to sell sponsorships, understanding who the target audience is that comes to these kinds of events will help you help the client understand why this would be a good place to promote your product. There's also a company out there called Blesh, and I have a video here again. It's a company that supplies beacons to stores. And basically a beacon can be in a store, a museum, a bank, and it basically lets off a signal to your mobile phone, to your smartphone, that tells you about different deals and events that are going on at that store that you will be passing by. So it's all related to like geo-targeting, location advertising. So take a look at that so you have a better understanding of what a beacon does and how popular they have become. More on outdoor advertising. Outdoor advertising refers to street and highway advertising. And the two purposes: one is a reminder of the brand, and two is directional. So it can be as simple as an open house, or this guy on the street twisting his signs around to let you know that H&R Block is doing taxes, or there's a liquor store, or cigars, whatever it is. It's directional and awareness. Billboards do make a dramatic statement. I like this one. It's for a zoo in Colorado Springs, but it's like one of those that goes on and on with a story. And sometimes you have some really cool three-dimensional signs, and you might even have a billboard that's on each side of the highway, depending on the kind of highway that you have. Excuse me. And then place-based media, it can be 10 feet by 30, 14 by 48. It can be quite large. Some of them can have extensions to them, cutouts. Digital displays are really the latest thing because you get so much more out of it. Every so many seconds, the display changes so that you're not only promoting for one company, but you're able to promote for a lot of different companies. And of course, this all happens on the highways where we have idle time, whether you're a passenger or a driver, during traffic. These billboards are usually rented for 30-day periods or longer, and they're really based on the population and how much exposure that billboard gets. For example, Florida Turnpike in 95, we get so much traffic on there, no matter what state you're in. And so that's a very popular spot. So it's called a showing, and it means based on the number of vehicles that are passing by, because there's really no way to tell whether or not your billboard made
is significant, or made someone purchase a product, or made someone more aware of a product. It's kind of like you're just hoping by exposure of so many people in a period of time that you are getting people to look at your ad. And that's why it's so important to have bright colors, be bold, be original, be creative. They have to be new and novel. Some boards are new and equipped. They even run little movies on them. And they even have electronic signboards, like if you go to a gas station. So think about where you've seen digital signage. Now it's pretty much everywhere. It's at a gas pump. It's at waiting in line somewhere, even at a grocery store. I've seen it. It can be places like um, fast food restaurants. And this is a creative ad here using the space for Imodium. These are the kinds of billboards I think are just so cool and creative. So there's unique uses for billboards, like I mentioned. Fast food restaurants are using kiosks. This was long before COVID, and really it helps us feel like we're personalizing our order, and it also moves things along quicker so that they have our order ready. Of course, there's transit advertising. That's on buses, trains, subways, anything that's exterior. And the cool thing about this is, is that like a taxi or a bus is constantly moving all around. So it's a moving billboard is what it is. And they wrap these buses for a number of weeks. There's also the event sponsorships I was telling you about. Um, This is that outdoor media that is in stadiums. I happened to be at a Heat game last year, and the entire event was sponsored by Bacardi. And so if you were of age and you paid a little bit of money, they gave you little swag bags, and they had like a little cocktail area where you could try out samples of their new products. So this is very effective. You have a group of people together, and why not have the opportunity um, to expose them to a new product? This is a Subway. Again, when I talk about uh, anything that's moving or guerrilla marketing here. This is a wrap that's unusual. So let's get to online advertising as the last part of chapter 13. You have internet advertising that can run on websites, as you know. It can also be presented in other formats, such as banners and across the top of a page or down a page. So spending on online advertising is about $75 billion a year, and it has overtaken TV ad spending. Obviously, we're on our phones more, we're on our devices more, and depending on the target audience you're going after, as you all know, will depend on where you're going to spend your money. Mobile ads will receive over half of online spending dollars, and mobile video is the fastest growing category. And we know this because of TikTok and different age groups. We like to see videos, whether we're watching a recipe be made quickly on Yumly, or we are watching something silly like a pet video. But we know that that's fast, quick, gets our attention, and also there's a lot of sharing that happens with videos as well. Small ads on web pages are called banner ads. Skyscrapers are the ones that are up and down the page. Pop-ups and pop-behinds burst open on the computer screen. There's also microsites and mini sites, and they're all small websites that are offsprings of a parent website. So web ads can also generate interactivity. Remember, we want engagement. We want your audience to engage in some way, and whether it be download something, like something, using a hashtag, sharing it, whatever it is. Remember, you need to do that in any ad that you're using, because it also helps you track whether or not this worked and evaluate whether or not this advertising really engaged your audience. More on web advertising, superstitials are thought of as the internet's commercials. And they're designed to work like television ads. So again, this is putting definitions to things you already know. Widgets enable people to create and insert professional looking content into their websites. And we know that click-throughs are that measure of success I was just talking about. If you're clicking through, it's telling the advertiser that they're engaging you and we're taking you to the next place where you might purchase something or view something. Click-through rate nearly doubles when motion and an interactive element are added to a banner ad or to any form of online advertising. So really think about that. Makes sense, right? We all are guilty of this, but it's not something that's static. It's something that engages us. Online ad videos, website visitors or viewers are watching video downloads also confront a variety of online video ads such as beauty ads. And if you're making one of these videos, make sure you're using a storyboard or you can actually create your own video. I gave you a couple of websites for a template for storyboards, as well as one to make a video called Biteable. But there's so many more out there. I mean, all of you can make a simple video, but you need to make sure that you're going through each part of the video and describing what's happening, whether it be the tone that's being used, the people in it, the action that's taking place, the music, the person speaking, however you decide to do it, make it as professional as you can. Videos and storytelling and influencers are the growing areas in advertising, as we have discussed for most of the semester, but definitely discussed last night. Another area that is growing is SEO and keywords. We are kind of lazy and when we're searching something, we want to find it out quickly. So having keywords in the search, for instance, under soup or under plant-based beverages, that's where Pacific Foods comes in. That's called search engine optimization and search advertising or search marketing. So think about, have you ever had the experience of searching for something and then receiving an ad on Facebook or Instagram? This happens a lot. Different algorithms are happening, and there's also social listening that's happening. So social listening is growing, and it is when companies are listening for mentions or trends that are happening in their product category so that they can react to it quickly. Ads can be positioned on sites associated with keywords. The practicing of maximizing the link between topics and brand-related websites is called search optimization or SEO. Quick response codes are becoming more popular. They came out, they kind of died down, they're back again, QR codes. They are two-dimensional barcodes that engage the customer. They're scannable and they give people information about the product very quickly, whether it's an ingredient list, information about where the product came from. And there is a QR code and retailing YouTube video here I would like you to take a look at as well. Print and broadcast media have struggled with competition from online media. So this is really the issues of traditional media. Some newspapers and magazines have decided to bundle subscriptions that include print, digital, and apps for smartphone and tablets. So that's where that media planning comes in. I talked a little bit about it last night, but you have media companies that know how to buy across the board for their clients. And a lot of companies, as I mentioned here in the second bullet point, are bundling so that you're making sure you hit your target audience in a lot of different places. More TV cable customers are cutting the cord by moving away from traditional services using programs like Sling and on-demand options. Maybe you have done this. So I'm going to end this here for chapter 13. I'm going to reiterate what I talked about last night. Please reach out to me with any questions about your message and the two media that you are using for your target audience. You have a lot of work to do. You need to work as a team. April is approaching quickly, and as I mentioned, I'd be happy to meet with any of you via phone, Zoom, or during class to make sure that you are on track and you're being as creative as possible. So I will see everybody on Monday, and for my online class, please reach out to me as well.